Welcome to Demo 5 of Excel 2011. In this demo, we're just going to work with two things. We're going to work with worksheets, particularly the Worksheet Tabs, and we're going to work with the print options. Now, the Worksheet Tabs can be manipulated in three ways, and I'm going to show you. We just go down to a tab, hold down the Control key, and click, and we're going to rename the tab. Since this is the gradebook, we'll just simply call it gradebook. Hold down the Control, click again, and I'm going to give it a color. And we'll make it bluish color. Now I can leave this tab color up because I'm going to go to the next sheet and do it as well. So over here on the next sheet, since the color is already up, I can go grab a color for it and X out of that now. Hold down my Control key to rename. Since this is my attendance, that's what we'll call it. We don't need sheet number 1, so the third thing you can do with a sheet is delete it. Now you're going to get a message that says, are you sure you want to delete this? It's going to be permanent. Nothing there, so I might say okay, because if I need another sheet, I'll just hit the little plus sign down here, which will give me another sheet. So we can take these tabs now and move them into different positions. So back and forth, depending on how you want it. Remember I talked about, I do attendance first, so I might as well keep the attendance all on one sheet and be the first sheet. So we'll keep it right there. Now let's look at setting up orientation. And by orientation I mean, should this be portrait or should it be landscape? Portrait or landscape orientation. That's kind of important when you look at the layout of these things. So under layout we have orientation. We're going to put it into landscape mode. Now notice the minute I put it into a mode other than what it was, this blue dotted line appears. And the blue dotted line basically is going to tell me what will fit on a single page. So if I were to do a preview, this sheet would actually take up 2 pages because page 1 stops right there, and then these 4 columns make up page 2. Well, I can always change that because all I'm doing on this page is putting in X's or T's for tardy. So I can really shrink that down. You remember where we find how to do the column width? Under Home, Format, Column Width. So I'm going to make the column, instead of this 0.9 inches, I'm going to make it 0.5 inches. Hit the OK. And notice it all comes under that page, but we've got our railroad tracks. So something went wrong. It doesn't fit. So let's do that again. Make it a little bit bigger. So let's make it 0.6. See if that helps. It does. And notice we barely make it to the edge of the page. But we can always change the margins if we want to. So under Layout and Margins, we can decide custom margin that we want, and then we can change these. Notice it shows it in a landscape mode right there, where the widest is across the horizontal and the narrowest is vertical. We can always change this left and right. Change it to 0.5, change it to 0.5, top and bottom. We can change. What's this all about right here? Center on page. Well, I can actually take my sheet and center it horizontally and vertically on the page. Let's hit the OK and see what happens when we do that. Notice I'm well short of the dotted line now, well within. So let's preview that. So this is what it would look like if I were to print it out right now. Notice the information on my spreadsheet is not in the upper left-hand corner. It's now centered horizontally and vertically. Horizontally, vertically. And it's on one page. That's a good thing. So you can, it's always a good thing to preview before you print. Let's go over here to the gradebook and see what that looks like if we were to do a preview. Right now, doesn't look too bad. See, that's the default, upper left-hand corner. So that's okay. That's nothing wrong with that. I could very easily go in and set it up. Go back to margins here. Custom margins. Remember, this is under margins. And I can set it up horizontally. To, in other words, center it on the page horizontally. Now when I preview it, there it is, centered on the page at the top. If I did the vertical, it would be down here in this area. So what happened when I did that margins and custom margins? It brought up the page setup, which you can also find under the File menu. And notice there's 4 parts here: the page itself, the margins, headers and footers, and the sheet. Let's look at the page. Well, now we're back identifying what do we want this page to be. Now remember, we're only working with this sheet. Whatever I do here only works with this gradebook sheet, not the attendance. I have to do the attendance separately. So we're going to keep this in portrait. If it was just a little bit over, I could always say fit to one page. Fit it, shrink it down to make it fit on one page. And if it was just a little bit over, you know, may only change it to where it only needs to do 90%, but it'll still be readable. That's okay. Margins we've looked at. We can change the margins, space for our header and the footer, which we're going to do next. Whether we want it to be centered or horizontally or vertically. Here we just have horizontal. I'm going to go to header and footer. And now I'm going to create a header and footer. So I go to Customize Header. Notice this is different than what we saw in Word. Here you have 3 sections to work with. And these icons up here that will put information in for you as you want it. So let's say this is the header. Let's say at the top I want to put my name. And on the right hand side I want to put the date. Well, that's this one right here, Insert Date. So I click on that. And notice we get an ampersand with the word date in brackets. What that means is every time it prints out, or we print it, it will print the date that it's being printed. So if I print it out next Tuesday, it's going to have next Tuesday's date. So I hit OK, and there it is. My name, today's date. Customize the footer. And let's say all I want in the footer is to put in the center what page this is. So there's inserting page number. Right next to it is inserting number of pages. So watch what I could do. I could go here, page number, space, type the word of, and then click this one, which will insert the number of pages and type the word pages. So in other words, if this was a 5-page paper and this was page number 1, then it would say 1 of 5 pages. Let's delete all of that. We don't need it. I was just showing you that as an example. Hit OK. And so now we have 1 in the middle of our footer. Name, date, page number on the bottom. With the sheet, you can put in, particularly here, you can put in grid lines when you do it, row and column headers as you do it. Let's keep both of those down. Let's hit grid lines and row and columns, and let's hit OK. Now let's do a preview. Remember, under the Layout tab, we have Preview. Let's see what it looks like now based on what we just changed. It's still centered. There's our header. The bottom, there's our footer, just the page number. But we've also added grid lines and column letters and row numbers. Just in case someone's looking at this and they can say, hey, in D8, that was the wrong score. It should be 32, not 42. So those kinds of things you can send out and have people identify for you much quicker and easier, particularly when you're working with Excel. Remember, what I've done has only been done to this page, the gradebook page. Let's go over to attendance. There we go. Let's look at its preview and notice none of what I set up on the gradebook page has spilled over to format the attendance page. I would have to do the attendance page on its own. So in this demo we have looked at working with the tabs, renaming them, giving them a color, deleting a tab, what we would do if we needed to add a tab or a sheet, and looking at the print options and remembering that each time we change the print options, it's only activating for the sheet that we are working with.